How's it going, everyone? Hope everyone's having a fantastic day. And you know what time it is. I invite you to pull up a chair, sit back, and relax, and welcome you to yet another episode of the SPMA Council Podcast, the first for 2022. We're back to this online stuff again. Certainly nothing that we would have hoped for based on what we had in the first semester. So with that in mind, there there's no question that there's a lot of uncertainty going around. So I just hope everyone's doing okay, both physically and mentally. As the old saying goes, this too shall pass. It's not going to be like this forever. So I do hope you're hanging in there and you're having a great first week back at Brock, which is the reason why I have this little throwback jersey on that was worn during, I think, the 2018 Steelblade Classic. This was the name of the Brock sports teams before they were the Badgers, the Brock Generals. If you knew that, well, good on you. But if you didn't, well, now you know. But it's a little bit of an unorthodox, an unorthodox episode for a variety of reasons, because we will get to regular episodes with guests later in January for sure. But to get you pumped up for the second half of season 3, we put together a little compilation of the best of the first half of season 3 had to offer. So you're going to see a bunch of clips from some of the episodes that we recorded. It's filled with a collection of great sound bites, quotes, and great advice from the guests that we've had on during the first half of season 3. So we hope you enjoy. We hope this gives you a bit of a distraction from the uncertain world out there, and just know that we will be back with regular episodes with new and exciting guests very soon. For all guest announcements and for all episode previews, as always, be sure to stay tuned to our socials on Instagram at SPMA Council Podcast, and on TikTok, same handle, for, like I said, episode previews and some stellar content as well. But without further ado, let's get on to the best of season 3, the first half, that is. And once again, we hope you enjoy, and we hope you've had a great first week back at Brock to start the winter term. Cheers, everyone, and enjoy.
Would you be able to share a few ways that students can stay mentally sharp to ensure that they're making the most out of their year as we head closer to September and possibly some in-person classes throughout the year?
Yeah, I think the first thing that I probably would say to that is, for all of you guys, I just call it permission to transition, because it has been, such a year. And it's funny because, I know even for me, as much as I miss human connection and I'm all about people, it was, I remember when they first started talking about opening up, I thought, oh my God, like I have to get back to I got so used to doing this. Like I have to see people now,
Yeah.
It was weird. Like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm ready for this. So permission to transition, whatever your experience has been like, whatever you might go through, I think it's a transition period for everybody. And as long as you give yourself a little bit of grace for that. So just to all students, if you're struggling or something seems weird and it wasn't before and it is now, and you're anxious or whatever it is you're experiencing, it's okay, give yourself a little bit of grace and just use that little tagline, like, I'm giving myself permission to transition, because over time you will get used to it. The same way we adapted to COVID, you can think, if anybody had ever told us before COVID started this is what the next year and a half of life, this pandemic is going to come take over the world, and you're going to be stuck at home, and there will be no schools and no stores and no restaurants. Like, we would have thought, like, there's no way we could survive this. I even remember my kids, we were about a month in, and one of my sons said to me, I'm going out. I'm like, you're not going anywhere. He's like, I'm going out. I can't take it anymore. Like, I don't know. Right. But yet somehow we all survived it.
Mhm.
So give yourself that grace and allow yourself to transition. Whatever you're going through, it's okay. You don't have to fight against it. I find when we fight against that stuff or our emotions, it kind of will own you. So if you're anxious or if you're nervous, excited, like whatever you're feeling, honestly, just like, I'm noticing that I'm feeling this because of this. And if you allow it to flow in, it will flow out. And like we kind of talked about, trust yourself in the beginning, right? We talked about that. You will figure it out. And in time, you will transition and it will get better. So that's probably the biggest thing that I would say right now. The next thing I might say is just prepare. Like anything that you can do right now to prepare, like what could I put in place so that my transition when school or classes starts is a little bit easier. Whatever you can get organized and prepared now, do that, because it'll just make everything a lot easier. And then, once you're in school, I kind of use this tagline with my athletes. I always tell them, if you want a winning mind and you want a winning game, then we use this win statement, which stands for what's important now. So on any given day, it's really just, it kind of grounds you back to the present. What's important now, whatever it is you're going through. We can get overwhelmed, we get stressed out, but just stop for a second, take a deep breath and say, what's important now? And, I think it just is very grounding, helps you to figure it out, identify what the key factors and important issues are in that moment. And then you can now strategize to figure out what to do with it. And just, a couple final tips. I think I always tell students to just like time block your schedule. I talk a lot about how to win a day. So every morning, it's something that I do too. In the morning, I literally, what are the tasks and goals that I need to accomplish today? And then I identify, like I brainstorm a list, what's the non-negotiables? Like what's something, those get a star that actually have to be done. And then I will time block it into my schedule. Like if I have an appointment here, for you guys, it'll be, okay, well, I have class, but I have this big exam coming up or this project to work on. So I would time block it and literally schedule your study time in your schedule, plan it out, and then literally just follow your schedule.
If any of our listeners, didn't care for the first five questions, this last question is unbelievable knowledge to take into this year. I tell you, if you want to set yourself up for success for this year, just listen to this, because there's a plethora of information that you can take from this, and just to add on to it, as you're going through that transition period, this is a strategy that I guess I like to use is, think of a week. There's 7 days. There's 7 days in a week. And, I try to go by the phrase, win the week. You can have, every day's not going to be perfect, but, try to have at least 4 days that you can look back on and say, yeah, that was a good day. I accomplished something. If you had a bad day, that's okay. No one's perfect. It's only natural that those days come up, especially now, when this COVID crap is driving everyone up the wall. As long as at least try to commit to having a minimum of 4 good days, then I tend to think that it's worked well for me, and it might work well for you. And if you don't have those 4 good days, if you have 3 or 2 or 1 or none, and you need to take a break, do it. It's all part of that transition period you were talking about. And if you need to take that break, take it and try to win the next week. But
Love that.
Will, that's a really great statement. And just one thing that I know really helped me, I heard somebody say one day, is just try to make yourself 1% better every day. Whether that's,
I think I said that.
Was that you? It was either you or the other woman or the other lady on the speaker series. But that was really something that I took away from that night, was just make yourself 1% better every day. Whether that be like the smallest thing, like if that means for you, like getting outside for a walk for 10 minutes, like you're making yourself 1% better for getting out there and getting some fresh air and clearing your mind. Like 1% for everybody is going to look different. So whatever that may be for you, just try to do one thing for yourself every day to make you feel good. And I can promise you'll feel better.
From an operations standpoint, what are the main differences between the junior level or professional level? It can be in terms of the organization, the resources that you have to work with, the types of players that you have to see how you can make better, anything like that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And, going in, I don't think I really understood the differences between the two levels. I just assumed a hockey team would kind of have the resources available to be successful. And definitely with the Newfoundland Growlers, in a professional setting, it's done a little bit differently. Things are a little bit tighter. The budget is maybe a little more free flowing, just with revenue and things like that. And the Newfoundland Growlers are an ECHL affiliate of the Toronto Maple Leafs. So as you can imagine, money was not as tight in that organization, and definitely some more resources. And I was lucky enough to get in there and be involved as a hockey operations intern, but through a connection that I had made a couple summers before at just actually working at a summer camp. It's crazy where the opportunities come from. But with that opportunity, I was really involved in everything from ticket sales, community services. I was dressed up as mascots, doing community events, all that fun stuff.
Don't tell me you were dressed up as Buddy the Puffin.
I was on multiple occasions. Yeah,
That's
was
great. That's great.
Yeah, I can't take credit for the in-game. That is a special individual who has been thriving in that role for many years. But from time to time, I would take on that task in between doing video breakdown and some analytics. And again, at the pro level, you're really just trying to show you have what it takes to make it at that level. And that was kind of what I was trying to do. And I jumped in at the right time. We ended up winning the Kelly Cup during my internship. Kind of got to get the championship feel in the parades and the partying and all that fun stuff. But a unique opportunity. And then, as you mentioned with Sarnia, a very different situation, of course, an outstanding organization. And Dylan Sika, one of the best general managers in the CHL, very open to bringing me in. But in junior hockey, budgets are definitely very different. Things are a little bit tighter, and just, again, the nature of it's junior hockey. You're dealing with younger kids. You have to go about things a certain way. So I definitely learned a lot there as well, more so involved directly in the hockey operations department, just aiding through analytics. But both opportunities are great. And to be honest with you, I would suggest either if you were looking for an internship, especially in hockey operations. I think there's value in both the junior game and the pro game, but definitely fortunate to be involved in both and have some success, especially with the Growlers there in the Kelly Cup run.
So fast forward a couple years, and 2019 was a bit of a milestone for you, to put it lightly, as that was the founding year for your business, Shop Dressr. I just want to understand, what was the motivation behind making the decision to found your own business and start up in the apparel space?
I'll try and make a very long story short, but I may ramble on a bit, so bear with me.
No worries. No worries.
I came from a very entrepreneurial background. So my parents are both entrepreneurs. Sometimes when I would be in corporate life, my parents would literally be like, just quit your job, like just start a business. And I was like, oh, it's so easy. You can't just quit your job, but okay. So when I was in high school, my parents owned a competitive cheerleading gym. And I would do like all the like apparel designs for us and the website designs. And we would always have my designs sent off to a printer and someone would print them and we'd get them back. And I'd always be like, oh, I bet I could do this for so much cheaper. Like, I bet I could do this one day when I get a heat press. Like, it was like a running joke that one day I would have a heat press. And now I have a heat press. So that's great. So it all came around. It was good. But anyways, after Brock, I worked in sport for a couple years, and I worked for like IndyCar and I worked for NASCAR. And in Canada, that's not something, unfortunately, there's many like full-time positions in. So it was just after that, kind of taking what I could get. And I was working in hockey at the time, which, like, no offense to hockey, but I hate it. So it's like, I know everyone has their sports, but it's definitely not mine. So I wasn't exactly sure why I was working in hockey. And I was having like a little bit of an existential crisis. Like, after I graduated, I really went through a hard time of like post-grad depression and figuring out like, if I wasn't a student, who was I? And at the time, I was in a long distance relationship with a guy from Queens. So I spent a lot of my time in the car listening to podcasts. And do you know who Jay Shetty is? Do you ever listen to Jay Shetty?
That
No.
name sounds familiar, but I may need a refresher.
He's not a sports podcast guy. He's like he's a former monk actually, and teaches people about purpose and well-being. I would highly recommend him if you haven't listened to him before. But he was basically talking about in an episode saying like, how do you find your passion and your purpose? Like, and he was like, one of the number one ways you can do that is to look at your credit card statement. So if you look at your credit card statement and you spend all your money like on streaming services for like games or like going to football games or going to hockey games, like you can tell that like you're passionate about sports. And he was like, what do you do in your free time? And I started to analyze like what I did in my free time, and none of it was sports related. And I was like, am I really that passionate about sports? Why do I want to work in this industry? Like, what am I chasing and why? And I kind of analyzed, I gave myself like a little psychotherapy session. And was like, you know what? Maybe like I've been chasing this because my dad loves extreme sports. And on some level, I just want to impress him and make him think that I'm interesting so he can tell his friends his daughter works for NASCAR. And there's something about like women in extreme sports that's like attractive on some level. Like, men like when women can talk sports with them. And like, I was really like digging into this, and I was like, why am I doing this if it's really not who I am? I don't talk about sports. I don't go to events. Like, I don't do any of this. Whose dream am I chasing? So existential crisis taking place in the car. So that was fun. And so I started to analyze like what I do spend my money on and what I am passionate about. And a lot of it came down to fashion. Like, I love fashion, and I love like presenting your passion, literally wearing your heart on your sleeve and saying like, I don't go to Queens, but like, I'm a Queens student. Like, this is who I'm proud to wear this. You're wearing a Brock Sport Management t-shirt because you're proud to be part of like Brock Sport Management. And like, a lot of people do that. Of course, we tell stories of who we are through our clothing. And a number of events kind of led up to what Dressr has now became. But like I said, my boyfriend was a Queens student, and he asked me to come to homecoming with him. And I was at work one day and just decided that I was going to like design a t-shirt for myself for homecoming, because I went on the Queens like bookstore website and I didn't see anything that like really spoke to me. I wanted something that was like a little more edgy and a little more fashionable, and said basically like, I don't go to Queens, but still, hey, like, and I was going to figure out how to print a t-shirt. I was like, this is my mission, to figure out how to print a t-shirt for myself. So I made a design that said, I kissed a Gale and I liked it. And I was like, that's funny. That's edgy. Like, I think this is super cute. And I literally bought like an inkjet printer and transfer paper that you would like print out an image and iron it on with like an iron. It's like the worst quality. I still have it. Wine stains all over it. Like, it's just like terrible, but like, I don't want to get rid of it because it's like the first thing, one of the first things I ever made. And I made a couple designs, and this was all, I was living in a basement apartment in Etobicoke, like trying to make t-shirts like in this guy's basement. And a couple people said to me, like, we really like that. Do you think you could make us a design for homecoming? And I was like, sure, like, let me see what I can do. So I made a couple designs that said like post-grad and sad, because I felt that. And I thought Queen students might feel that too. Hot Gail Hoko, Gail's Gone Wild, like that kind of stuff. And I sold like 7 shirts to my friends. And I was like, that's pretty cool. I was like, maybe I could do like make some shirts and do this like on the side or whatever. And then I was like, maybe I could do something for St. Patty's Day. Like there's not really any specific St. Patty's Day merch. So I kept on working in my hockey job, and I'd go home at night. And because I wasn't doing anything after work, I didn't know anyone in the GTA. Like I was like, I'll build a business. I made a bunch of like St. Patty's Day shirts, and I was kind of like, same thing. My like brand is very like edgy, sarcastic. Like it has like a very distinct brand voice. And I don't know if you know the like competition between like Aberdeen and Ezra, like as like the party streets for like Queens and Laurier.
That's a rivalry in itself.
Yes, exactly. So I made shirts for St. Patty's Day that said Ezra didn't get accepted to Queens. And people were like, love that. Because I wanted to like humanize Ezra and be like, hey, that guy sucks. And he couldn't even get into Queens. And like, what's funny is when I was applying for university, I couldn't even figure out the Queens website. Like, I was like, if I can't figure out what programs they offer, I'm definitely not smart enough to go here. So it's funny now that I'm like making merch for them, saying like, oh, this guy's not smart enough to get into Queens. But in reality, I couldn't get into Queens. Like, it's like, it just wasn't happening, but that's not the point. And so my goal was to sell 25 shirts, and I sold 75. And I was like, shit, like, I was like, this could be something. And then the pandemic happened, and I don't want to get into like the whole story, but that was basically the beginning of it. Was I started making shirts and realized that like my passion wasn't necessarily in sports, it was maybe in something different, and started to go down that career path.
So during your time at the World Championships, kind of take us through what a typical game day would look like, such as duties you have to accomplish, or even some events that you had to react super quickly to. Kind of take us through how you dealt with those and what you kind of do on a daily basis.
Yeah, so I've been fortunate to be a part of 2 World Championship teams. Both were actually in Ostrava, Czech Republic. This most recent one was during the pandemic, right? So it looked a lot different than the one in, I guess, 2019 or 2020. So the big thing for us is making sure that we're doing our part in staying healthy, right, and staying safe. So usually in the mornings, it would start with a COVID test. So we'd go down and they'd have nursing stations set up at the hotel. The hotel was in a bubble format, so we weren't able to either leave the hotel or the rink. So we'd have kind of designated event staff to transport us to run and get whatever supplies we may need or equipment that we may need. But it would start with a COVID test in the morning, and then we'd typically have breakfast. And then soon thereafter, we'd go to a pregame skate at the rink. Once we get to the rink, you know, we have equipment managers that, you know, go to the rink 6 a.m. Like, if you've ever been a part of a hockey team, the unsung heroes of the world are the equipment guys. They're there. First ones there in the morning, last ones that leave. And so they're there doing their thing even prior to us getting there. And then typically we would take the group, myself, I would take them through an active warm up. So the guys would check their equipment and we go through an active warm up, make sure that they're ready, whether that's foam rolling or mobility prep, some band work, those types of things. And then we'd monitor. So as a healthcare provider, we're always overseeing on ice activity just to make sure that in the case of emergency, that we're there and we have kind of our emergency access plan ready to go. Heaven forbid something happens. And then after practice, we would we take them through a cool down, go through the nutrition, high performance habits, get our protein shakes in, get our recovery methods going. And then we'd head back to the hotel. We might do a post-meal snack or post-meal game. And then typically the players have a little bit of time where they can, take a nap or get rested before we go through pretty much that same process prior to the game. So then we'd, work our way up, pregame meal, travel. We'd go through the same warm-ups that we do, a lot of habits, right? And then the coaches would do their kind of on ice coaches chat pregame kind of coaches chat. And then once we get onto the ice, it's showtime. All eyes are on the players, and we're just there to make sure that if we're needed or called upon, then we're ready to go. So a lot of our work from a medical team happens beforehand, and then we're there just really in case of emergencies.
Were there any emergencies that you had that you sort of had to react to, or was this a relatively quote unquote easy tournament where you didn't really have any major injuries? Because sledge hockey is a lot more violent than people realize. Not only do the sleds have super sharp blades, but correct me if I'm wrong, but they've got these picks at the end at the top of their sticks that players use, and there's a risk that the players can get nicked up accidentally from those.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those that haven't had a chance to watch it yet, it's truly an amazing sport to watch. It's, high flying, lots of contact, everything that, hockey brings, it has. And, there's kind of a component of medieval jousting as well out there, right? These guys are on sleds that are made of steel or aluminum, and it's pretty amazing to watch. But unfortunately, it comes with, a high degree of contact and sometimes injury as well. So unfortunately at Worlds, we had a few fractures that we had to deal with. So, part of our management as a medical staff is then, to that individual player, preparing them for transport, managing shock, making sure that we're doing what we need to do to create a long-term management plan for those athletes to get them ready for that next event, whenever that may be. So lacerations, like you mentioned as well. So for those that don't know, it's like you're holding basically two mini sticks, and on the end, there's kind of razor blades and picks right on the end to allow them to skate, right? So those can absolutely, go to vulnerable areas. And when guys are scratching and clawing for pucks, loose pucks are in the corners, they definitely become a risk. And we always travel with Hockey Canada with doctors, team doctors as well. And it's definitely not uncommon to have lacerations be an injury that we have to manage. So lots of excitement from a medical standpoint. And you kind of always have to be on your toes preparing for that worst situation. It's one of those things where if you prepare for the worst, it usually never happens, but it's one of those things where when you're not prepared, that's when something's going to happen. So we always make sure that we're doing our part from medical staff and coordinating with host medical to make sure that the appropriate steps are in place to, heaven forbid, something does happen, that, we can quickly and swiftly manage it.
So we've talked about how to be a good leader, and we've heard from a lot of great leaders. Can you share the importance of some of the characteristics of how to build effective leaders?
Yeah, it's a journey, right? I've talked to the class about leadership being a journey, and you're not born a great leader, but you take all these different experiences from along the way, and you figure out what can make you the best possible leader, right? And I think in the last class, I said, write down all those things that all the bad leaders have done, and then do opposite. Because oftentimes you learn that way, right? You don't want to fall into some of those traps that maybe some previous leaders had fallen into. And by the way, no one's perfect, and everybody's going through that leadership journey. So that's okay. But hopefully those leaders are recognizing some of the challenges that they have as well, because it is a journey. But when you're talking about developing leaders, I think there's a number of factors that we can talk about. being that student of leadership that I talked about, right? Recognizing that, as you start to, manage people, right? There's certain ways that you need to manage people, and you shouldn't just be thrown into that situation, right? It should be something that you are prepared for as an individual, but your company should be preparing you for as an individual as well, right? But leadership's just not about managing people, right? Leaders are at all different levels, and you can demonstrate leadership wherever you are within an organization. So for me, when I'm trying to talk to people about leadership, and the first misconception they say to me is, well, I don't have any people reporting to me. Like, that doesn't matter, right? That's whether they report to you or not, you can still show leadership in many different ways, right?
Exactly.
Are you being innovative? Are you being creative? Are you thinking outside of your day-to-day routine, right? Everybody's got these functional roles that their job is made up of, but that's expected of you, right? You're expected to perform the functional roles of your job. That's what you're paid for. Well, what about this other bucket that I would call, leadership? So for me, if I'm developing leaders, I want to make sure I'm empowering people, right? I'm empowering them. I'm giving them the autonomy to figure things out. And that might mean they might succeed, and oftentimes they might fail. But as a leader, I may want to let my people fail a little bit so they can learn, right? And not purposefully or something that's going to be a major detriment to the company, but that's a learning experience, right? I want to give people the autonomy to figure some things out on their own. I want somebody that, is presented with a problem in a situation to come to me with a proposed solution, right? Not just ask for the answers, right? So I'd like to listen to a proposed solution. And I think that's really important. I want to be able to have someone that I can coach and develop, and that wants to listen and wants to learn, right? It's very easy for people to get defensive around coaching.
Mm-hmm.
They feel like they have all the answers. Well, no one has all the answers, right? I think people just need to be prepared to listen, to absorb, and also as a leader that gives feedback, I appreciate people that will say, will have a conversation or a debate with me along the way and say, here's what I was thinking when I approached that project this way, and this is the strategy I went down the road with. And Chris, what do you think about this? Did I go the right direction? Did I not? But here was the background as to why I did that, right? They had thought through the process, for example. So as long as there's good discussion and that person talks to you about the strategy of what they were trying to accomplish, I think then a good coaching session can happen. But there has to be two-way communication in order for people to want to be able to be coached. So for me, those are a few different things. And then the last thing I'll say there is, I want to be able to reward and recognize, people as well, because I think at some point along the way, we need to create space between, those that are going to go on and succeed and become future leaders, and those that maybe they won't be great future leaders, right? We have to provide opportunities for those that are going to succeed to advance and to develop. So we need to reward and recognize our top performers as well. And I think that part's really important, specifically in our industry, in lots of industries. But I believe in meritocracy. I believe in people rising and succeeding and earning their way. So those are a few areas of how I would develop leaders.
You said, all of these things that you were able to learn, like at Sigma Promotions, you sort of transitioned that into starting your own business with the Wheeled Brew. Obviously, other than the fact that it's a bar on wheels, what makes it unique, and why did you kind of go into that, like serving private events and birthdays and weddings? Like, what was sort of the decision behind that sort of business model?
Yeah, so I think just rolling back a little bit to when I was living in England, again, getting a fresh perspective. I was able to go to central London to some of the markets, and northern England, some of the markets, and just see some ingenuity and creativity of businesses that maybe couldn't afford a brick and mortar location, or had a really cool brand concept. I saw some working with vehicles that they would have in markets. There was one guy who took a black cab, welded out the top, put an espresso tower in, boom, black cab coffee now has multiple locations.
Wow.
All across the UK. And just things that, just again, expanding your mindset and thinking around a roadblock that potentially would get in your way. So I saw things like that, and some interesting movements. There was a really cool charitable organization called Change Please, which took unfortunate and poverty-stricken, homeless or mentally ill people, and kind of put them with a rehabilitation officer, and would run coffee carts with them. And once they had worked a certain amount of hours, that business would then become theirs. So it was a really cool. I don't know if Laura Cousins is still there doing sport for development.
She is. She's actually my professor for strategic alliances. And she does teach sport for development as well. So
yeah, so that was one of another eye-opening class that I took there as well, because again, going back to that Change Please, that was one of the most inspiring charitable yet progressively entrepreneurial programs, where they were using entrepreneurship and business as a way to grow and develop an under and kind of a stricken category anyways in London. But just circling back, those few things that I saw in those markets really got my brain going. And maybe at the time, I was a bit younger, I took those ideas in and I was inspired by them just with my marketing brain. I was always taking in different businesses or seeing different cool things, but I didn't act on them. And it's one of those ideas I've had a ton, good and horrible, over the years, but that one just burned with me for a long time. And I knew coffee wasn't necessarily my thing, but I really enjoyed the camaraderie and the creativity, ingenuity of the craft beer industry. So as I got a bit older and out of school and had these kind of diverse working experiences, boom, the Wheeled Brew popped into my mind. And I just, the final straw was being at a friend's wedding, and the bar there was just a Home Depot folding table with a tablecloth over it with all the liquor on it. And for the most visited segment of a wedding, I just thought there had to be a better way. And I looked around, there was no one else doing it in the country. There was a few kicking around in South America where the laws were a little more lenient, and over in Australia as well, but there was nothing here in Canada. So that was that moment where it just started burning inside my head severely, and I had to do something. And it just kept knocking down the door until the point where I became completely I wasn't risk averse anymore. I just went for it. I went out, and I remember fearfully buying my first truck, Howard, and standing alongside my dad and telling him what I was going to do to it, to take a 1940s extremely rare and unique vehicle and drill holes in the side of it. And I remember him saying, that's crazy. No. And but I went ahead with it anyway. And after probably the greatest, it's been 3 years, probably the craziest, wildest, biggest learning experience of my life, that it's just continuously growing and expanding. And I think it's I have proof of concept that people love it. People love how unique it is. It turns heads, and I think it did fill that niche gap that maybe none of us really thought about, or maybe did and just didn't act on it. And that's another thing where you can find some success, is just going that route. So that's why I went with the mobile business model, is bringing beer to the people and connecting them with awesome local craft beer. And it's kind of kind of continued with the bottle shop.